recording now.
Sure.
Right. Good afternoon, and I'd like to welcome everyone to this week's edition of the Belonging series by Imperial as One, where we explore the experiences of BAME individuals and their experience of that getting that sense of belonging. And this week, I'm really happy that we've got Joy Maitland on with us. And Joy is the managing director of Inemo and an award-winning executive coach. But I'm not going to say much more. I'm going to allow Joy to speak for herself. So Joy, it's a real privilege to have you on with us today. And I really am happy that you're here. And I know we're going to have a fantastic conversation. As is my custom, could you give us a little bit about your background in terms of your early childhood and how that may have influenced your sense of who you are and your sense of belonging?
Sure. Thank you, Wayne. And let me just first say it's a pleasure to be here with you and to participate in this really honorable venture, as it were. I've heard of Belonging and Imperial as One for some time. And so again, it's a pleasure to be here. So if I could start with where did it begin? It all began in the Caribbean, actually, in Trinidad, Trinidad and Tobago, TNT, as some people know it.
Yeah.
And that's where I was born, and my maternal parents was from there. My mom was from there, and her parents were from there. And my dad was from Grenada, so we spent I spent part of my childhood in Grenada, and another part of my childhood in Trinidad.
Mm-hmm. Growing up in the Caribbean, right? It makes me feel a bit envious now because of all the hot sun and everything like that. What kind of what kind of precepts, principles did your family instill into you as you were growing up? And who would you say would have been one of your major influences growing up as a child?
When I think about influences, I would say predominantly they came from the church, actually.
Right.
My family were Catholic. I went to my primary school. I went to school with nuns,
right.
And it was all girls school, and then went to convent.
Yeah.
In Trinidad and in Grenada, actually. So it was shaped initially by that kind of doctrine, that sort of that discipline that you get when you're involved with the church or when you're Christian.
Right.
And then I would say my grandmother had the biggest influence. My mother's mother had the biggest influence on the family, as it were. She was definitely the leader when it came to that. And she had certain principles and values that she instilled in her children. She had 8 children.
Wow.
Yeah. And, it's amazing because all the boys were taught to cook and to iron and all of that. And in the Caribbean, even though you had somebody to iron and somebody to do different things, she made sure that all her children understood what it meant to do to do that work, that housework.
So she instilled a self-awareness and a kind of like a standing of this is what it means to be part of a community. This is what it means to be part of a family.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my grandmother would insist, for example, as they grew up, my uncles and aunts, they lived all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
And she would always insist that wherever in the world we would all come back as a family every Christmas. Every Christmas, everybody stayed at my grandmother's house. Wow. Every uncle, every aunt, every cousin, and any extended family, because you know what we're like. We always have extended family, aunties and uncles. We call auntie and uncle, and then we find out much later on that they're not actually blood relatives.
Oh, that's fun. So from growing up,
she was very strict.
She was very
very, very, very strict as an individual about standards, as you say, and the can-dos and the must-dos. And I mean, even to the extent, Wayne, that, if you as a young lady or young girl laughed in a particular way that was a bit scandalous, she would say, "Oh, laugh like a lady, sit like a lady," and that sort of thing. Yeah, she took it to the nth degree, I would say.
So she maintained a standard which she didn't allow anyone to drop below.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Is something which I know of many West Indian, Caribbean women, that they do have a standard which,
yes.
which they want to instill in them. They maintain that standard themselves, and they want others to maintain that standard as well. Yeah.
Correct. I mean, it even extended to how we treated each other.
Yeah.
And making sure where I learned probably about equality and fairness mostly from within my family.
Yeah. Could you give us an example?
Wow. In terms of equality and fairness, as I say, first of all, she was insistent that we all treated each other with respect.
Mm-hmm.
And, she couldn't abide things like fighting and all of that. She would always try to ensure that any issues were resolved, very, very quickly, and it didn't develop into some sort of long-term, I'm not speaking to you, you're not speaking to me. As grandchildren, she would ensure, at Christmas time that she gave all of us the same presents, for example. All of the cousins ate together. And all the folk ate together, and all the cousins ate together. Even the way that we were in touch with each other on a regular basis as we grew up, and even as we grew older, the whole tradition of having everybody together and bonded was important.
I suppose that helps to shape an idea of. So let me ask a question. How has that shaped your approach, kind of like moving from the family dynamics when you go into business and stuff like that? Could you just enlighten us a little bit? I gave a little brief glimpse at the start about what it is that you do, but could you give a fuller description for us, if you don't mind?
Sure. My principal role is to help leaders and managers improve performance, which, their own personal and professional performance, so that the business too can improve.
Mm-hmm.
But what does that mean? In essence, first we start with self-leadership. Before we could lead anything else, we must lead ourselves. And hence, that's why I'm an executive coach. I work with a lot of senior people and help them overcome the barriers to that success. A lot of us feel that because someone is senior, if we're more junior, we have this idea that they know it.
Yeah.
Maybe because they give off the impression that they know it all. And so they have this idea that they know it all. And so when they fail to meet a certain standard, they're very disappointed in their leadership. And oftentimes that, when people rise to the top and they get to a certain level within an organization, they find it increasingly difficult to say that they don't know or to ask for help. Yeah, even when they know that they need help, they're reluctant to ask for help. We talk a lot today, and have been for the last few years, about imposter syndrome. And a lot of them, I say to CEOs that I coach, I say to them, the greatest fear of a CEO is being found out. And they look at me like, what? I said, that's what keeps a lot of CEOs awake at night, because they are fearful that people will realize that actually, I don't know as much as they think I know, or I don't have all the answers. And so it's that. So when we start with self, we start with taking a real deep look at your own interaction with others, your own self-talk. How do you relate to yourself as an individual, to ensure that you're not in any way self-sabotaging or putting barriers in the way, and that you could build those stronger relationships with your peers, with your reports, and with your line managers, as it were, if you have a line manager.
Yeah.
But it's all, for me, it's all about connection. Yeah. And how did that translate from my childhood to now?
Yeah.
It is, I love, love, love making connections. And I do think that, you know, when you look at organizations, they're a collection of people all wanting to make connections. And if the right connections are made, then everybody succeeds. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that idea about, you kind of like answered my question. It was kind of like, my question was going to be, so how did you go from your childhood experiences, etc., into the role which you now occupy? So that transition, what was it that appealed to you about leadership and developing and motivating people?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think I was coaching individuals, coaching people, and sometimes people older than me before I knew I was doing what I was doing. I was always the one that someone would come to for advice, my cousins, even my mom at times for advice. And I didn't think anything of it at the time. I just offered the advice. Somewhere within me is the desire to help others, a great desire. For me, life is about, I have this motto, be the difference, make the difference, you know, and you can take that anywhere, whether it be in a one-to-one relationship or within an organization. If you seek to be the difference and make the positive difference, you're on the right track. So for me, my job, my role within society is to be in the service of others. I fundamentally believe that. That is a truth for me. And to be in the service of others is to give of yourself and all of your talents without any judgment. So whether the person is the cleaner in British Airways or the CEO within British Airways, you give the best of yourself. Whether you're talking about working, you know, let's talk about organizational culture. That's, I mean, a lot of people struggle with it, but, you know, fundamentally it is me doing the best job that I can, Wayne, so that if I, for example, I have to send some data to you, Wayne, if I do the best job that I can, that allows you to do the best job that you can.
That's right.
But if I don't, if you have to keep coming back to me and saying, you know, this is incorrect, you only sent me part of the data and whatever it is, I'm not being of service to you, and certainly not in the right way. Does that kind of answer?
Yeah, that kind of, so it's you're a servant leader, some people would class it as, because you position yourself that you want to help others, but in the same vein, you're actually helping lead people along their own narrative pathways. Would that be?
Exactly so. So let's take, for example, when I was a more when I became a director, I discovered, you know, when you start to do budgets, and you start to get over, I discovered why those people lower down the pecking order in the organization, in my organization, were struggling to achieve achieve their full potential. Why is it? It was the case because those of us who were directors were flown to different parts of the world to do leadership programs and spend days together and bonding. And those lower down the pecking order had very little opportunity for that. So what I started doing is whenever I would be sent on a leadership program, I'd come back, I'd write a program that I would then deliver to the staff members, you know, in my extended team lower down the pecking order. So I'd always try to contribute and add value to what they were currently doing.
That's quite, I'm going to say that that's quite unique in having that kind of perception to give back, because it seems oftentimes, especially within certain environments, it's kind of like, what can I get? Not necessarily what can I give. And so so it's the blessing which came to you, you're then giving that out to others. Yeah.
Absolutely. And growing through it,
Yeah.
you know, you know, I mentor a lot of young people,
Mm-hmm.
mostly of, you know, BAME,
Mm-hmm.
and really and truly, for me, it's all about them
Mm-hmm.
being rising to their potential. And I
Mm-hmm.
learned so much from mentoring them. It's
Mm-hmm.
incredible if we open our ears and our eyes to what they have to contribute.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're much, much stronger for it.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask, you've just mentioned there about the fact that you mentor. How did you get
Yes.
into that role as a mentor? And who do you mentor with? Is it just within your organization, or is it in a wider kind of um, sphere of influence?
Well, that is another interesting question because I mentor lots of different people and they come to me in different ways.
Right, okay.
Some say I get a WhatsApp message to say, you know, Joy, I have this daughter or son who could benefit from some of your wise words. Would you mind speaking to them? And then next thing you know, a year down the line, I'm still mentoring them. You know, a number of the young men, and I have to say men here because they came from the Amos bursary,
Right,
which I
okay.
was involved as a board member, and I contributed as head of their learning and development, the leadership development program. So I created and designed and delivered a 4.5-year program for the students of the Amos bursary. And since stepping down from the board of the Amos bursary, I've continued to mentor quite a number of the students. And
Right.
they're now older, they're now in their first job or just finishing university and that sort of thing. So yeah, it's a great joy, a pleasure, and an honor to give in that way.
Because I was just gonna say, what reward do you get from that? Because it can take a lot of your time. So
Okay.
what rewards? How is it rewarding? What rewards do you get from that whole experience?
Well, first of all, I keep in touch with the youth.
Yeah.
It's got to be done. It's got to be done. But beyond that, really, the reward is to see them thrive, seeing them rise to levels of leadership already in their organizations, or seeing them overcome certain barriers. So, again, you know, if you look at young people of a certain socio-demographic not heritage, of a certain demographic, let's put it that way. Yeah. Um, a lot of them have this feeling that they don't belong. You know, you're talking about belonging here. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really some work that needs to be done to say, hey, man, even though your journey has been different, the point of diversity is to capitalize on those differences
Yeah.
to the benefit of all. So that's what true diversity is. Diversity isn't sitting around the table and seeing a black, you know, white, brown, whatever. That's not diversity. Diversity is about diversity of thought, diversity and openness to the experience,
Mhm.
and a willingness as well for you, a willingness that you can share to share openly with others the best of yourself and your journey so that it helps them grow as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is what I see as diversity. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total
Yeah.
sense. So we're looking more beyond, we're looking beyond a simple characteristic. We're looking at the experience and how that experience develops or can help to develop a way that everyone can progress with a better understanding. Because if we only have half of a story, we don't know that when we devise something, whether or not that's going to actually um, help somebody, because it's only half of the story that we know about. So it's
Correct.
yeah,
Which is why earlier I mentioned starting with self,
yeah,
because first of all, you have to value the diversity in yourself,
hmm,
your story, your journey. You know, not all Black people have the same journey. Come on.
right. That's right.
You know?
Right. Yeah.
So my rich tapestry met your rich tapestry. Imagine what we can do if we were open to share in the way that I've just described.
Yeah.
First, we value, you know what? I am worth it. And
Yeah.
I'm worth more than I even think that I'm worth.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I used to say to my boss, you know, you can't afford to pay me. And she'll say, well, what do you mean, Joy? And I say, well, think about it. I am unique. Yeah. There's no a single other Joy Maitland on the planet who is like me.
That's
So
right.
you cannot put a price on me. The value is what I decide it is
Yeah.
when I accept that job, you
Yeah.
know, in terms of monetary,
Yeah.
in terms of salary and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I tease her about that, you know, and remind her every now and again. But I was serious because, you know, the value of Wayne is immense, even
Mm,
beyond what we can imagine.
mm, mm.
So imagine that around a board table or any meeting table or in a group. Imagine if you brought all of you to that group, how powerful that group could be.
That's a really, really, really good a really good idea, right? I'm gonna challenge you on it.
Go on,
Right? I'm gonna
challenge
challenge
me.
you, right? Because oftentimes people will say that I can't bring my authentic self to the table because people won't value my authenticity. They will,
Yes.
and so how do we overcome that? Because to be open and to be of ourselves, I understand the idea of having that self-worth, but it's also about how other people perceive and the labels which they put on you. So how do we overcome that?
I guess it's my perception of authenticity,
Okay, yeah.
Wayne, because for me, authenticity is, for example, in a board meeting and I do not agree with what is being said. It will be inauthentic of me to go along with the group think
Mm-hmm.
just so that I could be friends with everybody or people will see me in a particular way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for me, I have to speak my truth,
Mm-hmm.
and I hope that people accept it as it is.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the time when people talk about authentic self, you
Mm-hmm.
really wonder, I really question. And because I do a lot of coaching, I
Mm-hmm.
say, do you know who your authentic self is? Because people walk around going, I want to be my authentic self. And what they mean is, I want to be able to dress in a particular way, have my hair in a particular way. You know, if I want to put my foot up on the table, then I want to be put. No, there are disciplines to the authentic self.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the a real authentic self should be able to relate to others as they would like to be related to. Yeah.
Okay, okay,
You
okay.
see what I mean? So
Yeah,
first of all, you know, it is said that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
right, yeah, yeah, I've heard that
Yeah.
one. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So authenticity is about keeping your eye on what is the most important thing here. What are we being called to do or asked to do? It's not necessarily about ourselves,
Yes.
because if we are trying to make a decision, let's say we're talking about the strategy, then does that strategy lead to what we want to achieve as an organization, as an individual, as a group?
Mm-hmm.
And if it doesn't, then why are we doing it?
Mm. Mm. So it sounds to me, I like what you said there. It sounds to me that you're not afraid of being challenged or challenging others to think outside of their own stereotypes, prejudices. that you're quite happy to bring your, as I said, your authentic self into whichever environment that you find yourself in. I'm gonna kind of like, and I know, and I think I know what the answer is going to be. Okay. Where did you get, because there's a lot of people who don't necessarily have that level of self-belief, if that makes sense. So where did that level of self-belief come from for you?
Wow. Goodness, I'm not sure that anybody ever asked me that question. To some extent, I think it's perhaps because of past experiences.
Okay.
When I was a child, Wayne, mm-hmm. I was born knock-kneed. Do you know what knock-kneed is, right? I had a terrible lisp. I couldn't use, like C was something difficult for me and all of that sort of thing. And it was through a traumatic experience that I actually grew. You know, this whole idea of resilience. So mm-hmm. Let me briefly tell you what happened. Mm-hmm. I was about nine years old, going on 10. And I was at school and we had something called Courtesy Week. Yeah. And I was really excited about Courtesy Week. You know, it's when we nice to each other and whatever it is. So see how far back this goes, right? And I was so excited, and they were selecting 10 individuals. I think it was 10 girls, again, girls' school, convent nuns, girls' school, to make a particular statement. So the statement, you know, you'd stand and everybody had this kind of placard and we'd reveal it and then say what it said on the placard. And I rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed. And it's so on the day, I was the first person to reveal their placard. And I had to say, honesty is the best policy, right? Yeah. Imagine saying that with a lisp and somebody who was incredibly nervous at the time. Mm-hmm. And I just went, I could have died. I wanted the ground to open up and swallow me up, you know? And I looked at my sister's face. She was in the same school and she was like at the front of the audience. And I was like, oh, I saw her face. She was. Yeah. And then I had to wait for the other 9 girls to finish their bits before I could come off stage. What did I do, right? I was upset. Yeah, I was upset. But then you know what I did, Wayne? Unprompted by no one. I went, and for the next how many months, I stood in front of a mirror and practiced saying words. Mm-hmm. What do I do for a living today? Mm-hmm. I'm speaking, I'm coaching, I'm training. Yeah. So from that comes the confidence that actually I can overcome. If I could do that, mm-hmm. and it could not, you know, I could have hidden away forever. Mm-hmm. I don't know what made me do something different.
And I suppose that comes back to your motto, which your own motto, which is
be the difference, make the difference.
Be the difference, make the difference.
Yeah.
You saw that there was the opportunity that I didn't like what had happened, yeah, but you didn't just sit back and say, well, I can't do anything about it. This is who I am. Yeah. You made a difference. So yes. Be the difference, make the difference to your own experience and ultimately to thousands of other people's because of the stuff that you do.
Yes.
I'm just wary of I told you that our conversation would go quickly. 1 o'clock already.
Yeah. Okay.
I wanted to just highlight the fact that you're also an author, if I'm correct. Is that right?
Yeah.
So
thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about your book? When's it coming out? World exclusive?
Okay, here's my book. You saw it here first.
Right.
It's called From
Hold
Alpha
it up
to
just
Zen.
slightly. Brilliant.
It's called From Alpha to Zen.
Right.
And it's out on the 25th of March. It's actually available now to pre-order on Amazon. Mm-hmm. But it will be in paperback, Kindle, and Audible, an audiobook.
Brilliant. Can you give us a little bit of, we don't want the full extract, but give us a little bit about what it is that's in that book. What inspired you to write that book, and how do we, yeah.
Okay, what inspired me, and really, really briefly, is that I observed that leadership, the sort of, if you look around the world today and you look at the state of leadership,
Mm-hmm.
you know, there's very little that you can see that you can hang your hat on and think, yeah, I want to be like that person, or I want to be like that person. Because those who seem to be out front seem to be taking us down the wrong path.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
So so alpha leadership, when I talk about alpha leadership, I am talking about individuals who are more authoritative,
Mm-hmm.
who have more of the strongman tendencies,
Mm-hmm.
who are right all the time,
Mm-hmm.
who are individuals who do not take other people's opinions on board.
Mm-hmm.
So they loathe anybody who is against them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they love a frenzy. They love this whole idea. They love the storm and the chaos. They thrive on chaos, as opposed to a Zen leader who is more inclusive, more participative. They want to see others thrive. They want to share success with others and that sort of thing. So I propose that going forward, leadership is going to need to be more Zen than it has been, than Alpha in the future, if we are to continue, if we are to thrive as companies, as nations, as individuals.
Mm-hmm.
We have to take more of the Zen
Yeah.
road than we have done in the past,
Right.
and especially in the most recent past.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the way that you explained that. That makes perfect sense. So we're moving. It's that leadership style movement from the authoritarian approach, which many people still seem to adopt, to that inclusive. Let's value people's
Correct.
opinions. Let's listen to people's opinions.
Yes.
Right,
Mhm.
because that's where the strength comes from. The strength comes from the difference, not the similarity, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Did you read my book, Wayne?
I haven't.
It sounds like you have. It sounds like you have. Yeah, you know, it's just a more thoughtful type of leadership. I mean, if we really all, if our, you know, it is said that if you call yourself a leader, nobody's following you, you're just going for a walk. So don't kid yourself. You know, but wouldn't you like to be the type of leader that you would follow?
Mm, mm, yeah.
You know, it's not just you alone and everybody else is that. You know, when I train leaders, you know, especially I do a lot of training in parts of East and West Africa.
Yes.
And all of the training I do is at C-suite level or above. And one of the words they use all the time, and I immediately get them to stamp it out, is the word subordinate. That's an old American term for subordinate. I ain't like, really?
Mm-hmm.
How could you lead when you're calling everybody who reports to you subordinates? I mean,
yeah.
you gotta banish that from the lexicon, 100%.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I do know exactly what you mean. Right, I've got some more questions, but I'm gonna just see if there's anybody in the audience who has a question which they'd like to pose at this time. Otherwise, I'm quite happy for us to just carry on having. Oh, Omar. Omar, if you.
Hey.
Oh my, Omar.
Hello.
Hello, Omar.
My hair's not looking great today, so I'm going to keep it voice only. I just wanted to ask, it's been really brilliant hearing your insight, especially from such a high-flying individual from within the community. I just wanted to ask, how receptive, from your experience, have young Black males been towards kind of, reaching out and seizing those opportunities to kind of, grow from mentoring and other things in terms of development?
You know, Omar, thank you for your question. I have found that young people are ready, they're anxious, they want those opportunities to be mentored, because it bears fruit, it bears results. And they too realize that they're growing and they're learning, and that there is much to overcome in all of us before we can truly be who we are meant to be and to realize our full potential. Uh, I think if anybody thinks that, teenagers and young people in their 20s or believe they know it all, that's not been my experience. My experience is that young people are hungry to know what to do and what to do differently, because they see what's out there and they know things need to change, but they may not know how it should be changed or how they can make that difference. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. The reason why I ask is not because I feel like there's been a kind of lack of interest. I just think that there's been a kind of shyness about reaching out and knowing that those opportunities are there, and just kind of going for those opportunities because of maybe past stigma, or sometimes fear. So I think it's just nice to know that young people who are going to be the generation after my generation are obviously kind of keen to learn and just keep on bettering themselves and going for those opportunities that they deserve, you know.
Yeah, Amar, you raise a good point, a great point, actually. And so I encourage all organizations that have any sort of mentoring programs where they involve younger people, that when you train, because I train mentors as well, when you train mentors, encourage them to go more than 50% of the way initially. So, I've had examples where senior people sit back and go, well, yeah, I've said I'd mentor Omar, but he hasn't called me, you know. And I say, no, actually, you're the senior in this relationship. And initially, yes, I agree that Omar needs to contribute, but initially, you need to perhaps go even 70% of the way to establishing that relationship, to what it should be going forward. Because Omar might be shy. Omar might have those concerns that you just expressed, Omar. So that's what I encourage all mentors to do, and I'll encourage them today as well if anybody's on the call listening.
Thank you very much. That's brilliant. Thank you.
I do like that idea of kind of like, as the mentor, you having to establish and making sure that there's that relationship. So all
The trust.
yeah, to build the trust.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, how can you really assist someone if there isn't that relationship or the development of a relationship which can
Correct.
mutually beneficial? And I think that's another point, that as a mentor, inverted commas, you're also the mentee, because
Correct.
you're learning from the men. It's getting all wordy now, but you should be learning from the mentee who's going to give you a different dynamic, if that makes sense. Yeah. Is there any other questions that anyone wanted to ask? Otherwise, I've got one other question which I really want to ask. I think I'm going to just ask it. How have you found, because all of the excuse me, right, working in the roles which you do, right, working with senior executives, working as executive coach, as a I'm gonna go there now, as a Black woman, how does that feel? Have you ever felt challenged in being in those positions? Because earlier on you talked about imposter syndrome. When you go into a boardroom and you're the only one, how does that make you feel? Does it make you feel any way? How do you overcome that, etc.?
The first thing, great question again, Wayne. Good for you. You're going to get top marks by the end of this. The first thing I think is, how can I, what's happened here and how can I change this picture? That's the first thing I think of.
Mhm.
So I'll give you an example. I joined and was voted on by the membership onto the board, the trustee board of the Institute of Leadership and Management. It
Mhm.
is a 70-year-old organization, and I was the first Black person on their board. Yeah. And immediately my thing was, how can I change this picture? How can I get more people involved? You know, I didn't think about me and would anybody listen to me or did I have something to say? I go every time to give the best of myself.
Mhm.
Yeah. My grandfather always used to say, Joy, make sure, or make sure you leave things better than you found them. My dad told me the same thing. Always make sure you leave things better than you found them. And I can tell you, I worked solidly to ensure that we develop a more diverse board for the reasons that we discussed earlier.
Yeah.
And now the board is more diverse. We actually change policies and procedures to ensure that we're reaching out in the right way to and encouraging people who are BAME to apply, for example.
Mm. That's
Not the only aspect of inclusivity, but yeah.
I can, you know what? The more that I discuss things with you, I can see the living embodiment of your statement of your motto, make the difference, be the difference. Right? I can see it just by what you say in terms of the way you went into that environment. You saw the situation, has made an assessment, and you put in place plans, procedures, so that going forward, there will be a difference.
Yes.
I'm not sure whether I should call it the joy effect, right? Once joys come into the place, right, there is going to be an impact. Right?
Oh, goodness.
So we can look at it in multiple ways, because joy is something which, when I think of the word joy, it's joyful. It brings out, it's a celebration. And so I think I am going to use that. Sorry.
Well, yeah, as long as I can use it too. Please don't copyright. But Wayne, here's the serious bit about that. I do not feel that we as Black individuals really open ourselves up enough and give enough. And what do I mean by that? I genuinely do not believe, from my experience, there may be people on this call that might disagree with me, that we are always seen in the right places. Yeah. And I'm really serious about that. Yeah, I'm a fellow of the Institute of Leadership and Management, the Institute of Directors, and the Chartered Management Institute. And I can tell you that when I attend networking events or whatever programs they may be running, oftentimes I'm probably one of two, maybe, people in the room. And I reach out to friends and I encourage them to join these organizations and to be a voice there for all of us. I really don't get, with this immense amount of talent in our community, why it took 70 years for a person to be on the board of the Institute of Leadership and Management.
Yeah, with you're 100%. Yeah,
with a global reach, And I think, I might have said this before, but I believe that if 20 of us were in a room, this is a way we could make a difference, right? Check this out, all right?
Yeah.
20 of us in a room, all right? And we decide within the next 12 months, each of us are going to be members of a board such as the Chartered Management Institute or the Institute of Leadership Management, the Institute of Engineers. I haven't looked at that recently, but whatever it is. And this is our task as a group. Can you imagine the difference we will make if we have a seat at as many tables as possible?
Yeah.
And bring a voice to it. Because I genuinely do not see, when I'm sitting on those boards that I sit on, I don't see people rejecting my ideas. And that's because I don't see myself as Black first.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It might be my color, but it isn't who I am.
Mm-hmm. 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 I understand that. I understand that you're not defined, and I suppose this is something which when I've spoken to a number of people who originally came from a predominantly Black culture, so from Africa, from the Caribbean, when they come to the UK, that's when they say, the only time I realized that I was Black was when I came here, because that's when it then becomes a label to define who you are. Before that, you're Joy or you're Sam or it's not an issue.
100%. 100%. I recognize my Blackness when I arrived in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all around us, Wayne. You know, I remember thinking about this and actually writing to my mom and saying, why is it that when something happens, they always have to talk about the color of the person?
Mm-hmm.
Even a collision on the M25, it has to be a young Black female. What does it matter that the female was Black?
Yeah.
You know, if she died, we've lost someone, you know?
Yeah.
Why does it matter that it was a Black female who died? I mean, really?
Yeah.
You know, I cannot wait for these labels to be removed. Like I said, I am proud to be the color that I am and to relate to people, you know, based on my upbringing and all of the values instilled in me. But I will not let somebody make me feel less than. And as long as we continue to use these labels in this way, and as long as we continue to be absent from some key boardroom tables, and instead, you know, have discussions about what government is not doing and what this one is not doing and what that one is not doing, you know, let's make sure that we change it, not in every way possible.
Yeah.
And that's not to put down what groups of individuals have achieved. Not at all. I think it's necessary for these groups to exist, and they make a massive contribution. I am saying let's think inside the box as well as outside the box.
Brilliant. Joy, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. I think Sarah had one final question. Sarah, did you want to ask the question, or should we leave that?
Oh, just very quickly, because I think I saw that Amos bursary. So I know previously, historically, it was very much tailored towards Black men.
Yeah.
And I think I read that it's now opening up to women as well.
That's
I don't
correct.
know if you heard anything about that or any comments on that.
Yeah, that is correct. They're in the process of opening it up. They're establishing their procedures and things at the moment. So that I don't think it's not been officially launched yet, but they are opening it up to females. Yes, 100%.
Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Joy, once again, I did want, if you could read just a short extract, if you don't mind, of your book from Alpha to Zen, just a very short, but this is the promo section, guys.
Oh, goodness. Okay, Lord. Okay, let's see. A bit of the epilogue, perhaps.
All right, that's brilliant.
This is towards the end of the book, and let's go. The net impact of it all is that leaders in this century must adapt to a set of circumstances their older counterparts never had to. Increasingly, we will witness the evolution to Zen leadership in nations, corporations, organizations, churches, and businesses around the world. Alpha leadership, with its xenophobic authoritarianism, lack of core inclusivity, and harmony, will be left behind as the world's mixed race populations grow as projected to become a majority by 2050. The 5 words that should remain in our minds as we close this book are participative, tolerance, science, as in facts, data, analysis, thoughtfulness, and inclusivity.
Brilliant. Now I need to get the book so I can read the rest of it up until that point. And everybody on the channel needs to as well. Please do. Joy, once again, I want to just say a massive thank you for such an inspiring conversation that we've had. I knew it was going to be good, but it's even surpassed. There's new nuggets which I've got from this experience. So once again, I wanted to say a big thank you.
A big thank you to you, Wayne, and all of your team, all of your attendees, all of the audience. Thank you very much for showing up and for contributing.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Right. I'm going to just share. Next week, we're going to have, well, this week and next week, I deemed it as part of Imperial's Women at Imperial's Women's Week, which is going to be starting next week. But I thought having Joy here as a powerful Black woman was the right way to kick off Imperial as one's start to it. But next week, we're going to have Daniela Tran, who's an Associate Dean of Academic Enhancement at the University of the Arts in London. So tune in next week to see Daniela. And if you've missed any, or if you've missed any of the other recordings, please go to our YouTube site, which is this tinyurl.com/belonging-IAO, and you can tune into all the other recordings. Once again, I want to just say a big thank you for everyone, and a big thank you to Joy for coming. And I hope to see you again next week. So thanks a lot.
Thank you. Every good wish, everyone. Be the difference, make the difference.
Be the difference, make the difference. I love it. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.